Educational administrative policy, so it's not as exciting as psychopaths or psychopathy.
May not be that different.
In terms of the background, if we look at the literature on educational change, what we find is that some voices are more evident than others. Starting. Okay, so what we're going through now with, as most of you know, working at universities, is that in post-secondary education, we're experiencing some changes in our operational environment. And usually these changes are due to factors beyond our control, such as global financial crisis, which creates things like a pension liability. Other things would be the changing nature of, or the changing characteristics of students. And so the types of students that who are coming into the universities nowadays are not like the types of students that we used to see. So a change, if you will, in terms of a production process, the change in the raw materials that we're working with. Other things that are going on, what universities have done is that they have, in order to address these changes in their operational environment, is the first thing that they've done is to expand human service mandate. And a human service mandate is simply the care for or being responsive to the types of needs that students have. So students may be entering into university without having any writing skills. And so we expand or create academic skills at the writing center. They may be coming in with more emotional dilemmas, and so we're expanding counseling services and those sorts of things. The other thing that universities are doing is they're cutting instructional budgets, or cutting everywhere. And so they're asking employees to do more with less. So I've referenced the literature, but I think most of us have lived those experiences by now, and so we're quite familiar with it. So why ask teachers or employees about educational change? If you look at the educational literature on educational change, you'll find that some voices are more evident than others. The types of voices that are usually underrepresented in the literature are teachers' voices, or the voices of staff members, the voices of community members, the voices of students, and those sorts of things. What is the logic in terms of, as a sociologist, doing research and asking teachers what they think, or asking staff members what they think, or asking students what they think, is that with respect to teachers, they're key agents who are crucial to achieving success in educational change. You might expand that too to staff members, or even if you think about students' perspectives and how valuable they are in achieving success in educational change. And certainly the community schools literature extends that to just about all of those people who are underrepresented in the literature. So in terms of the community schools data collection project in Saskatchewan, it happened between 2003 and 2005. What was my role? My role was to design, manage the collection of, and to analyze the qualitative data. The method of data collection we used was focus groups. And we did focus groups with community members and educators and staff members. And today I just want to talk about the data from the focus groups from staff members and educators. So it will be 9 focus groups and half the participants you see there. First of all, so we'll talk about what is a community school. This community school movement recognizes that the roles and responsibilities of the family and educational institutions have converged. Okay, so lots of things that, especially with the expanded human service mandate, a lot of the things we're doing today were yesterday the responsibility of parents. Professors didn't deal, or even educational administrators weren't responsive to those types of needs. And so what the community schools movement intends to do is to build real connections between the school, family, and community. So within the community education model, one of the things that it's designed to do is to improve students' educational outcomes, but also In doing that, one of the concerns is that we maintain high expectations of academic excellence. And I hear this from faculty all the time. The other thing is that the community schools model is intended to do, or designed to do, is to include everyone in planning processes, making decisions about education and schooling, and in terms of the evaluation or assessments of the results of educational change. So the principles of community education, there are 6 of them. One is inclusiveness. It involves, with respect to teachers, some deprofessionalization, and teachers have had to become better at, one might say, public relations. The second principle is shared responsibility, and so that it's not only conveying to parents and students and teachers alike that, you know, education is not like buying a toaster at Walmart. Everybody is working together to build it. So it's not just the student's responsibility, or it's not just the professor's responsibility or the parent's responsibility to make learning happen. The third principle of community education is shared leadership. It involves something called devolution, which is usually site-based or unit-based management and planning. And it can be done in a number of ways, either democratically or hierarchically. The preference is that devolution be done democratically. So it's not just a consultation process which is artificial, but it's really authentic process. The fourth principle of community education is that we be responsive. So we try to not only respond to to traditionally, conceptions of traditional students' needs, but a more modern conception of students' needs, which is the complete need of the student. So one might think about emotional needs and that sort of thing. And so the fourth principle is integrated services. And so schools nowadays will involve what are called school-linked or in-school services. And so you can think about some of the services we have here. Some of them we have on-site. Other services, we have people come into the school periodically and deliver those services, so they're not here every day. And the sixth principle of community schooling is lifelong learning. The idea that we are all students, right? And the provision of and that we should provide services, educational products for all different types of learners. And so, so what did we learn from employees about implementing these principles in Saskatchewan? What employees and staff members were saying about inclusiveness is that staff and educators need to do more interpersonal work with parents, students, and other community members, such as non-teaching professionals working in or through the school. Usually means contact time increases overall, which takes away from other duties. And so elementary and secondary school teachers were telling me that they had less time for course prep, less time for this, less time for that. Within the context of post-secondary education, we might think that we're going to have less time for research or something like that. Shared responsibility. And this was interesting. Most of the principals were saying, yes, but at the end of the day, I'm still responsible. And so the head administrator is still held solely responsible in the end, which constitutes a barrier to achieving shared responsibility. One might say that it's in spirit only rather than reality. So you can flatten your educational bureaucratic structure, and you might think that we have 6 deans now. If we wanted to, flatten it, we might eliminate 3 of those deans and have 3 deans and maybe add one for Oshawa. And so that would flatten our bureaucratic structure. And we might do more consultation here on site, but at the end of the day, the dean is still responsible, or the associate dean is still responsible for what goes on. So whether we have chief success or not. With respect to shared leader, what they said was that site-based management does not mean site-based control over the allocation of resources. And so the sums of money that are distributed to schools are often not consistent with expectations regarding the goals that educational communities are asked to achieve. And so devolution is often hierarchical rather than democratic. So they say, look, we'll give you this money, but these are the goals we want you to achieve. And usually the goals are like limitless in their conception, and the money it pales by comparison to the expectations. responsiveness. Teachers and staff lack the training and often the resources that they need to be able to adequately respond to a student's complete educational needs. And you can think about the introduction of the AODA, the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act, and you can ask how many of the professors have training to be responsive in the classroom to the needs of particular persons with disabilities. And most of us just don't, right? And so there's a demand there. Integrated services, what did they say? They said in-school services are preferable to school-length services, so students often require immediate help when they're in crisis. And so if a student's in crisis and they need counseling, maybe the one person here who offers counseling is not available because they also are juggling a bunch of other responsibilities. Lifelong learning. What they said was educational products and services need to be flexible in terms of accessibility, for example, so that different groups of learners can consume them. And I'm using a business type language, sorry. But that comes out of the literature. And so what I've tried to do is I only had 20 minutes. Last year I think I went way over time. But the point here is to generate some discussion. It's clear to me how this community education model was built for elementary and secondary schooling, but how do we take, or how can we transfer some of these principles to the post-secondary setting in order to be responsive to those changes in our operational environment? And so that's my question to you. Okay, any other comments or questions about community education? Yep, Michael.
Just one thing, is it a safe conclusion that because we don't have training in dealing with people with disability, that therefore we're not capable of doing it?
We have some training.
But is dealing with people with different kinds of disabilities necessarily something that requires training? Sorry, in terms of adequate educational.
We have some training. I think most of us have done the modules that we do have. What we need as teachers is what they do in the elementary and secondary school system is they have something called in-service. And you're required to do so many in-service seminars a year. And so in order to update your skills with respect to being responsive to the needs of different learners. Yeah, and it could be just about anything, Michael, not just persons with disabilities, but it could be different types of learners.
But the people mentioned this specifically, and having been through some of the government mandated stuff in the last couple of years, it's some of the most incredible hogwash I've ever seen in my life. I don't accept for a moment the idea that the only way that you or I are capable of dealing with a particular set of situational concerns about a student's education is through a particular kind of training. Do you buy that?
I think there are multiple methods for being responsive to a student's needs. So, there's not just one way. Such as Microsoft has the Microsoft way, and they would like you to, achieve the goal that way. But certainly there are multiple ways that you can achieve the same goal, right? Yeah, Paul?
I thought the whole concept of shared responsibility was an interesting one in a place like this, particularly because it's a satellite campus and the other departments are up in Peterborough, and it's really hard to sort of, then on your own become your own sort of representative of the department here and want to sort of more or less sort of fulfill some goals that are given to you by the associate dean. So it makes it difficult. And the other thing about doing shared responsibility is that you actually have to make sure that you actually delegate certain goals to certain people and have them report back to you on their progress. And that takes time and effort and support from the team.
Right, no, I think you're making a very good point, yeah. Yes, yeah, Rita?
I guess my question is, what sorts of aspects of this model you think would not necessarily work here? And I'm thinking particularly in terms of the fact that we're very small and intimate. And
I think that shared responsibility when the Paul's commenting on is like I think the teachers and the staff are right.